The ship screamed through Earth's atmosphere like a dying star. Metal groaned and sparked as the hull began to break apart. Inside the cockpit, Zekthara gripped her control panel with clawed hands. Her yellow eyes blazed with anger. This was not how a Vorthaki warrior was supposed to die. "Emergency landing protocol activated," the ship's computer announced in her native tongue. The voice was calm, but Zekthara could hear the damage in the crackling speakers. She stood 8 feet tall, even when hunched over the controls. Her body was covered in thick, dark scales that could stop most weapons. Sharp spines ran down her back like a ridge of knives. Her face was long and narrow, with a mouthful of teeth made for tearing flesh. On her home planet of Vorthak, she was considered beautiful. Here, she would be called a monster. The ship hit the tree line with a sound like thunder. Trees snapped like twigs as the craft plowed through the forest. Zekthara was thrown against the wall. Even with her armor-like skin, she felt her ribs. Crack! The ship bounced twice, then slammed into a rocky hill and finally stopped. Steam rose from the wreckage. Small fires flickered along the hull. Zekthara lay still for a moment, testing her body. Her left arm was broken. Green blood dripped from a cut on her forehead, but she was alive. That was more than her enemies could say. She pulled herself to her feet and looked around the damaged cockpit. The main computer was dead. The communication array was destroyed. The engine core was cracked and leaking radiation. This ship would never fly again. "Primitive planet," she muttered in her harsh language. "Primitive creatures, at least the air is breathable." Zekthara activated her emergency beacon. It would send a signal to any Vorthaki ships in the area, but the nearest patrol was 3 star systems away. It would take them weeks to reach her. She would have to survive until then. She gathered her weapons and gear. Her plasma rifle was damaged, but still worked. Her hunting knife was as sharp as ever. Her armor vest had protected her from the worst of the crash. Most importantly, her universal translator was still functioning. She would need it to understand the local animals. The ship's door was jammed. Zekthara punched it 3 times with her good hand. The metal buckled and the door fell open. She stepped out into the alien forest. The air smelled strange, too clean. Too many growing things and not enough decay. On Vorthak, the air always carried the scent of death. It reminded everyone that only the strong survived. Here, everything seemed soft and weak. Zekthara heard something moving through the trees. Her head turned sharply toward the sound. Her enhanced hearing picked up the snap of twigs and the rustle of leaves. Something was coming toward the crash site. She smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. Perhaps this planet would provide some entertainment after all. David Chun had been a park ranger for 12 years. He had seen forest fires, avalanches, and bear attacks. But he had never seen anything like the streak of fire that had torn across the sky 20 minutes ago. It looked like a meteor, but meteors did not change direction in mid-flight. He drove his truck through the narrow forest road as fast as he dared. The GPS coordinates from the Firewatch Tower put the impact site about 2 miles ahead. He could already see smoke rising above the trees. David parked his truck and grabbed his radio. "Base, this is Ranger Chun. I'm at the impact site." "Beginning investigation." "Copy that, David. What do you see?" David walked toward the smoke. The forest was eerily quiet. No birds singing, no insects buzzing. Even the wind seemed to have stopped. "Looks like something big came down," he said into the radio. "Trees are down for about 100 yards. There's a trail of destruction leading to ... Wait." David stopped walking. Through the smoke and broken trees, he could see something that was definitely not a meteor. It was made of metal. It had smooth surfaces and strange angles. It looked like it had been built by someone. "Base, I don't think this is a meteor," David said quietly. "What do you mean?" "I mean, it looks like some kind of aircraft, but not like anything I've ever seen before." David moved closer. The object was about 40 feet long and 20 feet wide. The hull was dark gray and seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Strange symbols were carved into the sides. There were no windows that he could see, but there was definitely an opening where a door had been. "I'm going to take a closer look," David said. Negative, David. Wait for backup. Could be military. It'll be hours before anyone else gets here. I'm just going to do a visual inspection. David approached the wreckage carefully. His training had taught him to be cautious around crashed aircraft. Fuel leaks could cause explosions. Electrical systems could still be active. And if there were survivors inside, they might be injured or confused. He was 20 feet away from the opening when he heard a sound that made his blood run cold. It was like the growl of a wild animal, but deeper and more intelligent. It came from inside the craft. David froze. His hand moved slowly toward the pistol on his belt. He had never drawn his weapon on duty before. Park rangers dealt with lost hikers and campfire violations, not whatever was making that sound. Hello? He called out. This is Park Service. Are you injured? Do you need help? Something moved in the shadows of the doorway. David caught a glimpse of yellow eyes and gleaming teeth. Then a figure stepped out of the wreckage. David's mind struggled to process what he was seeing. It was tall, much taller than any human. Its skin was dark and scaled like a reptile. Spines ran down its back. Its arms were long and ended in clawed hands. Its face was alien and predatory, but the most disturbing thing was its expression. The creature was looking at David the way a cat looks at a wounded mouse. There was intelligence in those yellow eyes, and contempt and hunger. Zekthara studied the small pink creature in front of her. It stood on two legs like a Vorthaki, but there the similarities ended. It had no claws, no natural armor, no visible weapons. Its skin looked soft enough to tear with a gentle touch. Its eyes were small and weak. It moved slowly and clumsily. This was what passed for intelligent life on this planet. This pathetic thing? The creature was making sounds at her? Her translator worked quickly to decode the primitive language. Hello? This is Park Service. Are you injured? Do you need help? Zekthara almost laughed. The prey animal was asking if she needed help. It was either very brave or very stupid. On Vorthak, there was no difference between the two. She decided to respond. It might be amusing to communicate with the local wildlife before she killed it. I understand your words, she said. Her translator converted her speech into the local language. You are a native of this planet? David heard the words, but they seemed to come from everywhere at once. The creature's mouth was moving, but the voice sounded electronic and artificial. Yes, David managed to say. This is Earth, Montana, specifically. Are you ... Are you from somewhere else? The creature tilted its head. It reminded David of a bird studying a worm. I am Zekthara of the Vorthaki Empire, the alien said. I am a hunter and a warrior. You are prey. David's training kicked in. The situation was beyond anything he had ever experienced, but his instincts told him to stay calm and keep talking. I'm David Chung. I'm a park ranger. I saw your ship crash and came to help. Are there others like you? I am alone, Zekthara sighed, for now. She looked David up and down like she was deciding which part of him to eat first. Her smile revealed rows of sharp teeth. Tell me about your species, she said. How do you hunt? What weapons do you carry? How many of you live in this area? David realized that this was not a rescue situation. This was something else entirely. Something dangerous. David never got to answer Zekthara-esque questions. The alien moved faster than anything he had ever seen. One moment, she was standing by her crashed ship. The next moment she was gone, vanished into the forest like smoke. David stood alone in the clearing, his heart pounding, his radio crackled to life. David, what's your status? We heard voices. David looked around the empty forest. Had he imagined the whole thing? But the alien ship was still there, smoking and broken. The strange symbols on its hull proved he had not lost his mind. Base, we have a situation, David said into his radio. I need you to contact the FBI, maybe the military. This is way above my pay grade. What kind of situation? David stared at the spot where the alien had been standing. The kind that's going to change everything. Zekthara crouched in the branches of a tall pine tree, 50 feet above the forest. Floor, her dark scales blended perfectly with the shadows. She watched the human speak into his small communication device. Primitive technology, but functional. She had decided not to kill him immediately. The little creature might prove useful. She could learn about human settlements and weaknesses before she began hunting. Besides, watching prey animals in their natural habitat was always entertaining. The human climbed into his wheeled vehicle and drove away. Zekthara followed from the treetops, moving silently from branch to branch. Her species had evolved in dense jungle worlds. Moving through trees was as natural as breathing. The vehicle led her to a paved road, then to a small building with more vehicles parked outside. Humans went in and out of the building, all wearing similar clothing. Some kind of pack structure, Zekthara realized. These must be the local authorities. She spent the rest of the day observing from a distance. The humans were busy. They brought machines to the crash site. They took pictures and collected pieces of her ship. They talked constantly into their communication devices. Zekthara recorded everything with her suit's camera system. Her fellow Vorthaki would find this footage hilarious. Look at the prey animals pretending to be scientists. Look at them touching technology they could never understand. As night fell, Zekthara realized something disturbing. The humans had not given up and gone home. They had brought lights to the crash site. Bright artificial lights that turned night into day. They were working in shifts, taking turns so that someone was always watching. On Vorthak, prey animals hid at night. They found caves or burrows and waited for the sun to return. These humans seemed to have no fear of darkness. They simply made their own light and continued working. Interesting, Zekthara muttered. Stupid, but interesting. She decided to test them. The next morning, a human search team entered the forest. They were looking for her, Zekthara realized. The one called David must have told them about their meeting. 6 humans with communication devices and primitive weapons moved through the trees in a loose formation. Zekthara could have killed them all in minutes. Instead, she played with them. She followed just out of sight, breaking branches and leaving claw marks on trees. She wanted them to know they were being hunted. The humans reacted exactly as she expected. They became nervous and jumpy. They called for backup. They retreated to their vehicles and drove away quickly. Cowards, Zekthara said with satisfaction. Just like prey animals everywhere. But the humans surprised her. Instead of abandoning the search, they returned with more people. And these new humans were different. They wore heavier armor and carried better weapons. They moved through the forest like they had done this before. Zekthara watched from her hiding spot as the new team examined her claw marks. One of them, a female with short gray hair, knelt beside a tree and studied the scratches carefully. "Look at the spacing," the female said to her companions. "These claws are 6 inches apart. Whatever made these marks is big. Bigger than a bear." "Could be a hoax," another human suggested. "Someone trying to fake a monster sighting." The gray-haired female shook her head. "Look at the depth. These marks go 2 inches into solid wood. Nothing human could do this without power tools, and there are no tool marks." Zekthara felt a flicker of surprise. The female human was drawing correct conclusions from limited evidence. Most prey animals would have run away by now. This one was studying the predator's tracks like a hunter. The search team spent 3 days in the forest. They set up cameras and motion sensors. They collected samples of Zekthara's blood from where she had scraped herself on a branch. They mapped her movements and tried to predict where she would go next. It was almost like they were hunting her. The thought was so ridiculous that Zekthara dismissed it immediately. Prey animals did not hunt predators. That was not how the natural order worked. She decided to escalate her game. The human settlement was small. Maybe 3,000 people living in houses scattered across a valley. Zekthara studied it from the surrounding hills. She could see schools, shops, a medical facility, places of worship. A typical prey animal colony. She chose her first target carefully, a human male who lived alone at the edge of town. He worked at night and slept during the day. His nearest neighbors were half a mile away. No one would hear him scream. Zekthara waited until the human returned from his night shift. She watched him enter his house and turn off the lights. She gave him time to fall asleep. Then she broke in through a back window. The human never woke up. Zekthara's claws opened his throat before he could make a sound. She dragged the body into the forest and left it where the search teams would find it. Let them see what a real predator could do. The response was immediate and massive. Within hours, the forest was full of humans. They came in vehicles and helicopters and on foot. They brought dogs and searchlights and communication equipment. They found the body exactly where Zekthara had left it. She watched from her hiding spot as they examined the corpse. She expected panic. She expected chaos. Instead, she saw something that confused her. The humans were calm. They took pictures and measurements. They collected evidence. They communicated with each other in short, efficient phrases. They worked together like a military unit. Victim is Robert Martinez, age 42, one human reported into his radio. Cause of death appears to be massive trauma to the throat and chest. Wounds are consistent with large claws, approximately 6 inches in length. Time of death? Came the reply. Medical examiner estimates between 4 and 6 a.m. Any witnesses? Negative. Nearest neighbor is Mrs. Chun, about half a mile east. She didn't see or hear anything unusual. Zekthara frowned. They were treating this like a routine investigation. Where was the fear? Where was the panic? Prey animals were supposed to scatter when a predator killed one of their own. She decided to kill another one. The second victim was a female, human who worked at the local medical facility. Zekthara took her while she was walking to her vehicle after her shift. This time, Zekthara left the body in the town square, right in front of the government building. The human response was even more organized. They brought in more people. From outside the area, they set up a command center. They established patrol routes and communication schedules. They installed cameras and motion sensors throughout the town. Most disturbing of all, they began to change their behavior patterns. Humans stopped traveling alone. They moved in groups of 3 or 4. They carried communication devices at all times. They checked in with each other at regular intervals. It was like watching a herd of animals respond to a predator threat. Except these animals had technology and organization. They were adapting to her presence instead of simply running away. Zekthara killed 2 more humans over the next week. Each time, the response became more sophisticated. The humans brought in tracking experts and behavioral specialists. They analyzed her kill patterns and tried to predict her next move. They even began leaving traps for her. Motion-activated cameras hidden in trees. Infrared sensors that could detect her body heat. Bait animals tethered in clearings where she might hunt. Clever little prey animals, Zekthara said to herself. But cleverness will not save you. She recorded another video log for her ship's computer. The humans would make excellent entertainment. When she returned to Vorthak, her fellow warriors would laugh at the footage of prey animals trying to hunt a predator, but deep in her mind, a small voice whispered a disturbing question. If these were prey animals, why were they not acting like prey? Why were they studying her instead of running from her? Why were they working together instead of scattering in panic? Zekthara pushed the questions away. She was a Vorthaki warrior. She was the apex predator of known space. A few clever prey animals would not change that fact. She would continue her hunt until her rescue ship arrived, and when she left this primitive planet, she would take trophies to prove her superiority. The humans could adapt and organize all they wanted. In the end, predators always won. That was the natural order of things. That was how it had always been. That was how it would always be. Sheriff Sarah Martinez had seen enough crime scenes in her 20 years of law enforcement, gang violence in Los Angeles, drug wars on the Mexican border, serial killers in small towns. But she had never seen anything like the bodies that were turning up in Pine Valley. The wounds were too precise, too clean. No human weapon could make cuts like that. The forensics team had confirmed what Sarah already suspected. They were dealing with something that was not human. Sarah stood in the command center that had been set up in the high school gymnasium. Maps covered the walls. Computer screens showed satellite feeds and camera positions. Radio chatter filled the air as search teams reported their positions. "Ma'am, we have another one," Deputy Collins said, approaching her desk. His face was pale. "Hiker found the body about an hour ago. Same pattern as the others." Sarah closed her eyes for a moment. That made 5 victims in 2 weeks. Whatever was out there was getting bolder and hungrier. "Where?" she asked. "North Trail, about 3 miles from the last kill site. The creature is moving closer to town." Sarah looked at the map on her wall. Red pins marked each crime scene. The pattern was clear. The killer was circling the town, testing their defenses, learning their response times. "Get me FBI Agent Torres on the phone," Sarah said. "And contact the National Guard. We need more people." "Yes, ma'am. What should I tell the media?" "They're asking questions about the evacuation rumors." Sarah looked out the window at the town below. Pine Valley had been her home for 15 years. She had raised her children here. She had buried her husband in the cemetery on the hill. She would not let some monster destroy her community. "Tell them we have the situation under control," she said. "Tell them we're dealing with a dangerous animal. Don't mention anything about it being unusual." Collins nodded and walked away. Sarah turned back to the map. 5 red pins, 5 families destroyed. And somewhere out there, the killer was planning its next move. Zekthara crouched on a rooftop at the edge of town, watching the humans scurry around like insects. Their response to her hunting had been impressive for prey animals, but it was still just delaying the inevitable. She had expected them to evacuate by now. Most species would have abandoned the area after the first few kills. Instead, these humans were bringing in more people, more weapons, more technology. It was almost like they were preparing for war. Zekthara activated her suit's recording system. Her fellow Vorthaki would want to see this. The humans had surrounded their town with sensors and cameras. They had patrol teams walking the streets at all hours. They had aircraft flying overhead with searchlights. "Observe how the prey animals attempt to create safety through numbers," she said for the recording. "They do not understand that a true predator is not deterred by such measures. I will demonstrate their weakness by killing more of them." She had been studying their patrol patterns for 3 days. The humans were good at organization, but they were predictable. They followed the same routes at the same times. They communicated on radio frequencies that her equipment could monitor. They had weaknesses that she could exploit. Tonight, she would take 3 of them at once. That would break their spirit and send them running. Zekthara checked her weapons. Her plasma rifle was fully charged. Her claws were sharp. Her armor was intact. She was the perfect killing machine, created by millions of years of evolution and refined by Vorthaki military training. The humans had no chance. Against her, the patrol team consisted of 4 people, 2 local deputies, 1 FBI agent, and 1 National Guard soldier. They walked through the quiet streets of Pine Valley, their flashlights cutting through the darkness. Zekthara followed from the rooftops, moving silently from building to building. The humans had no idea they were being stalked. Their senses were too weak to detect her presence. She chose her moment carefully. The patrol was passing through an alley between 2 stores. No cameras, no backup nearby. Perfect for an ambush. Zekthara dropped from the roof like a falling shadow. She landed behind the last person in the group and drove her claws through his back. The soldier died without making a sound. The other 3 humans spun around, reaching for their weapons. But Zekthara was already moving. She leaped forward and slashed the throat of the FBI agent. Her backhand caught 1 deputy across the chest, sending him flying into a brick wall. That left only 1 human alive. Deputy Collins, according to his name tag. He had managed to draw his pistol and was pointing it at Zekthara with shaking hands. "Don't move," he shouted. "Stay back." Zekthara tilted her head and studied him. The little prey animal was terrified, but he had not run away. Interesting. "You cannot harm me with that primitive weapon," she said. Her translator converted her words into English. Your projectile weapons are too slow and too weak. Collins fired 3 shots. The bullet struck Zakthara's armor and bounced off harmlessly. She smiled and took a step forward, as I said, primitive. But Collins surprised her. Instead of firing again or running away, he spoke into his radio. Code Red, officer down. Multiple casualties in Sector 7. The creature is here. Repeat, the creature is here. Zakthara snarled and lunged forward. Her claws opened Collins' chest like a flower blooming in reverse. He fell to the ground, bleeding out on the dirty concrete, but the damage was done. Sirens began wailing throughout the town. Lights came on in windows. Vehicles started moving toward the alley. Zakthara cursed in her native language. The human had managed to alert his pack before dying. Now they would swarm this area like angry insects. She climbed up the nearest building and prepared to disappear into the night, but something made her pause on the rooftop. The human response was not what she had expected. Instead of panic, she saw coordination. Police cars and military vehicles were already blocking the exits from the alley. Helicopters were approaching from 2 directions, their searchlights sweeping the ground. Soldiers were taking positions on nearby rooftops. They had surrounded her. For the first time in her life, Zakthara felt something she had no name for. The humans had predicted her escape routes. They had positioned their forces to cut off her retreat. They had turned her ambush into a trap. Attention, hostile entity, a voice boomed from a helicopter's loudspeaker. You are surrounded. Surrender now and you will not be harmed. Zakthara laughed. The sound echoed off the buildings like breaking glass. Surrender? To prey animals? The idea was absurd. She raised her plasma rifle and fired at the nearest helicopter. The energy beam struck the aircraft's engine, sending it spinning toward the ground. The pilot managed to crash land in the street without killing anyone, but the helicopter was destroyed. All units, weapons free, someone shouted over the radio. Take it down. Gunfire erupted from every direction. Bullets whined past Zakthara's head as she ran across the rooftop. Most of the shots bounced off her armor, but some found gaps between the plates. Green blood began to stain her scales. She leaped from building to building, trying to reach the edge of town. But everywhere she went, more humans were waiting. They had night vision equipment that could see her in the darkness. They had radios that let them coordinate their movements. They had weapons that could actually hurt her. Zakthara reached the town's perimeter and found herself facing a line of soldiers with heavy weapons, machine guns, rocket launchers, and things she did not recognize. Behind them, she could see civilians evacuating in buses and trucks. The humans had not run away. They had organized an evacuation while simultaneously mounting a military response. They were protecting their weak while fighting their enemy. It was exactly what a military unit would do. It was what Vorthaki warriors would do. Zakthara turned and ran back into the town. She needed to find cover and reassess the situation. These humans were not behaving like prey animals anymore. They were behaving like soldiers. She found an abandoned warehouse and broke through a window. Inside, she tended to her wounds and tried to understand what had gone wrong. The humans should have scattered when she killed their patrol. They should have fled in terror when she shot down their aircraft. Instead, they had responded with immediate, coordinated violence. They had treated her like a military threat rather than a natural disaster. They had fought back. Zakthara activated her communication equipment and tried to contact her ship. The beacon was still transmitting, but there was no response from any Vorthaki vessels. She was alone on this primitive planet with prey animals that refused to act like prey. Outside the warehouse, she could hear vehicles moving through the streets. Search teams with dogs, aircraft circling overhead. The humans were hunting her now, using their technology and numbers to compensate for their individual weakness. This is temporary, Zakthara said aloud. They surprised me once. It will not happen again. I am still the predator. They are still prey. But even as she spoke the words, she could feel doubt creeping into her mind. Prey animals did not coordinate military responses. Prey animals did not sacrifice themselves to warn their pack. Prey animals did not fight back with such skill and determination. What if these humans were not prey animals at all? What if she had misjudged them completely? Zekthara pushed the thought away. She was a Vorthaki warrior. She was the apex predator of known space. A few clever prey animals would not change millions of years of natural law. Zekthara had been trapped in the warehouse for 3 days. Every time she tried to leave, human search teams were waiting. They had divided the town into sections and were checking every building, every basement, every hiding place. She had never experienced anything like this before. On her homeworld, predators hunted alone and prey animals scattered when threatened. But these humans were doing something different. They were working together like a pack of hunters, and she was there. Her food supplies were running low. Her wounds were healing slowly without proper medical treatment. Most importantly, her communication equipment was damaged from the firefight. She could not contact her ship or call for rescue. For the first time in her life, Zekthara felt something that no Vorthaki warrior should ever feel. She felt hunted. Dr. Elena Vasquez stood in the makeshift laboratory that had been set up in the town's community center. Around her, tables were covered with pieces of alien technology recovered from the crash site. Computer screens showed analysis, results, and molecular diagrams. "This is incredible," she said to Agent Torres, who was watching over her shoulder. "The metal composition is unlike anything on Earth. It's stronger than steel but lighter than aluminum. And look at this." Elena pointed to a fragment of Zekthara's armor that had been shot off during the firefight. "The scales are organic, but they're reinforced with metallic fibers. It's like biological armor that evolved over millions of years. Can we hurt it?" Torres asked. "Our weapons seem to have some effect." "Yes, but barely. Most of our bullets just bounce off. We need something with more penetrating power. Or we need to be smarter about where we aim." Elena pulled up a medical scan on her computer screen. "I've been analyzing the blood samples we collected. The creature has a similar skeletal structure to humans, but everything is larger and denser. If we can identify weak spots, joints, and soft tissue areas, we might be able to do more damage." Torres nodded. "What about its technology? Can we use any of it?" Elena smiled. "That's the best part. Their computer systems are incredibly advanced, but they're not encrypted. It's like they never considered the possibility that primitive species might try to access their data." She typed commands into her keyboard. The screen filled with alien text and symbols. "I've been working with the translation software from their ship. We're learning their language, their military tactics, even their psychology. Did you know their species has never encountered organized resistance from prey species? They expect everything weaker than them to run away or die. And we're not running away," Torres said. "Exactly. We're breaking their fundamental understanding of how the universe works. No wonder the creature seems confused." Elena pulled up another file. "Look at this. It's a video log from the creature's suit. She's been recording everything since the crash." Torres watched as Zekthara's image appeared on the screen. The alien was speaking in her harsh native language, but subtitles appeared at the bottom. "Day 7 on primitive planet," the subtitles read. "Local prey species continues to display unusual behavior. They do not scatter when threatened. They bring more individuals to confront predator rather than fleeing. This violates all known natural laws." Torres raised an eyebrow. "She sounds worried." "She should be," Elena said, "because we're just getting started." Sheriff Martinez entered the lab carrying a thick folder. "Dr. Vasquez, I need to know everything you've learned about this creature's capabilities. We're planning our next move." Elena pulled up a new file on her computer. "Based on the blood analysis and technology scans, I can tell you several things. First, she's stronger and faster than any human, but she's not invincible. Second, she relies heavily on stealth and surprise. Third, her armor has weak points at the joints. What about her weapons?" Martinez asked. "The plasma rifle is incredibly dangerous, but it has limited ammunition. She's been using it sparingly, which suggests she can't easily recharge it. Her claws are her primary weapons, which means she has to get close to kill." Martinez nodded and made notes in her folder. What about her psychology? How does she think? Elena smiled grimly, like a predator that has never been challenged. She's arrogant, overconfident, and completely unprepared for organized resistance. She keeps expecting us to break and run. When we don't, she doesn't know how to adapt. Good, Martinez said, because we're about to give her something she's never experienced before. Zekthara's stomach growled with hunger. She had eaten the last of her emergency rations yesterday. The humans had been clever enough to poison the local water sources with chemicals that her scanners detected as toxic. They were trying to starve her out. She activated her suit's communication system and tried once again to reach her ship. Still, nothing. The humans had somehow blocked her transmission signals. They were using technology she did not understand to interfere with her equipment. How was that possible? They were supposed to be primitive. Their technology was crude and inefficient compared to Vorthaki science. Yet somehow they were jamming communications that should have been beyond their capability. Zekthara heard vehicles approaching the warehouse. She looked through a crack in the wall and saw something that made her blood run cold. The humans were not just searching anymore. They were hunting. A team of soldiers surrounded the building. They were wearing heavy armor and carrying weapons she had never seen before. The weapons hummed with electrical energy and glowed with an eerie blue light. "Attention, creature inside the building," a voice called through a loudspeaker. "We know. You're in there. We have the building surrounded. You have one chance to surrender," Zekthara snarled. "Surrender to prey animals?" "Never." She raised her plasma rifle and aimed at the nearest window. "We also know you can understand us," the voice continued. "We've been studying your technology. We know how your translator works. We know how your weapons work. We know how you think." Zekthara hesitated. How could they know those things? Her technology was centuries ahead of anything these primitives had developed. "You're confused," the voice said. "You're wondering how we learned so much so quickly. The answer is simple. You underestimated us. You thought we were just animals? You never considered that we might be intelligent enough to study you while you were studying us." The truth hit Zekthara like a physical blow. While she had been playing with the humans, treating them like entertainment, they had been learning. They had been analyzing her technology, her tactics, her weaknesses. They had been preparing for this moment. "Last chance," the voice called. "Surrender now or we will take you by force." Zekthara roared in rage and fired her plasma rifle at the window. The energy beam vaporized the glass and struck one of the soldiers. But instead of killing him, the beam scattered harmlessly across his armor. The humans had developed defenses against her weapons. "All units, engage!" Someone shouted. The windows exploded inward as the soldiers opened fire. But these were not the primitive bullets that Zekthara had faced before. These weapons fired concentrated electricity that made her armor conduct painful shocks throughout her body. Other weapons shot nets that wrapped around her limbs and contracted automatically. Zekthara tried to fight back, but there were too many attackers coming from too many directions. Every time she focused on one group, another team hit her from behind. They were coordinating their assault with perfect timing. She managed to break free from the nets and charged toward the nearest exit. But the doorway exploded in a shower of sparks as an electromagnetic pulse weapon overloaded her suit's systems. Her armor stopped working. Her translator went silent. Her plasma rifle died in her hands. For the first time in her life, Zekthara was reduced to her natural abilities. No advanced weapons, no high-tech armor. Just claws and teeth against an organized military force. She fought like a cornered animal, slashing and biting at anything that came close. But the humans had prepared for this too. They used long-range weapons to stay beyond her reach. They used coordination to attack her weak spots while others provided covering fire. Slowly, inevitably, they wore her down. A shock weapon hit her in the back. A net gun tangled her legs. A tranquilizer dart found a gap in her natural armor. Zekthara collapsed to the floor, her vision blurring. The last thing she saw before losing consciousness was Sheriff Martinez, standing over her with a weapon pointed at her head. Got you, Martinez said quietly. When Zekthara woke up, she was in a cage. Not just any cage, but one specifically designed for her. The bars were made from her own ship's metal, recycled and reinforced. The lock used technology adapted from her own equipment. She was in a large room filled with humans in white coats. They were studying her like she was a laboratory specimen. Cameras recorded her every movement. Sensors monitored her vital signs. Dr. Vasquez approached the cage carrying a tablet computer. Hello, Zekthara. Yes, we know your name. We've been learning your language from your ship's computer. We've also been learning about your species, your culture, your military capabilities. Zekthara tried to speak, but her throat was too dry. A human brought her a container of water. She drank gratefully, hating herself for accepting help from prey animals. You're wondering how this is possible, Dr. Vasquez continued. How did primitive humans capture a Vorthaki warrior? The answer is simple. Zekthara had been in the cage for 2 weeks. Every day, the humans came to study her. They took blood samples and recorded her responses to different stimuli. They asked her questions about Vorthaki society and military tactics. They treated her like a research subject. The irony was not lost on her. She had come to this planet to study prey animals. Now she was the one being studied. Dr. Vasquez visited her every morning with new questions. Today was no different. Tell me about your home world, the human scientist said, settling into a chair beside the cage. What is Vorthek like? Zekthara had stopped refusing to answer. What was the point? These humans were going to learn everything eventually. They were surprisingly good at extracting information. Vorthek is a world of hunters, she said. Dense jungles. Dangerous predators, only the strong survive. And your people are the apex predators? We were, Zekthara corrected. We conquered every species on our planet. Then we went to the stars and conquered other worlds. We are the ultimate hunters. Dr. Vasquez made notes on her tablet. But you've never encountered organized resistance before. No, Zekthara admitted. Prey species scatter when confronted by predators. They run or hide. They do not fight back in coordinated groups. Why? Do you think that is? Zekthara considered the question. It had been troubling her for days. I do not know. It is simply the natural order. Predators hunt. Prey runs. Oh, but humans didn't run, Dr. Vasquez pointed out. We fought back. We organized, we adapted. Why do you think we're different? Before Zekthara could answer, Sheriff Martinez entered the room. She was carrying a thick folder and looked tired. The stress of the past month was showing on her face. Dr. Vasquez, we have a problem, Martinez said. Long-range sensors have detected 3 ships approaching Earth. They match the design of the crashed vessel. Zekthara felt a surge of hope. My people have come for me. Martinez looked at her coldly. Your people have come to invade. We intercepted their communications. They're planning to establish a hunting preserve on Earth. They want to use humans as sport animals. The words hit Zekthara like ice water, a hunting preserve. Her rescue call had not just summoned a rescue ship. It had attracted a hunting expedition. You must run, Zekthara said suddenly. Hide your people, scatter across your world. 3 Vorthaki ships carry 60 warriors. They will not show mercy like I did. Martinez raised an eyebrow. Mercy? You killed 8 people. I killed 8 in 3 weeks, Zekthara replied. 60 Vorthaki warriors will kill thousands in the first day. They will not play games or study you like I did. They will simply hunt until nothing remains. Dr. Vasquez and Sheriff Martinez exchanged glances. Then Martinez smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. Let them come, Martinez said quietly. Zekthara stared at her in shock. You do not understand. These are not patrol ships. These are military vessels with trained warriors. They have weapons that can destroy your cities. They have armor that your primitive firearms cannot penetrate? Our firearms have improved significantly in the past 2 weeks, Doctor. Vasquez said. We've been reverse engineering your technology, making upgrades to our own weapons and defenses. Martinez opened her folder and showed Zekthara a series of photographs. factories working around the clock to produce new weapons, soldiers training with equipment that looks suspiciously similar to Vorthaki designs, aircraft being fitted with energy shields and plasma cannons. "You gave us everything we needed to fight your people," Martinez said. "Your ship's computer contained detailed specifications for Vorthaki weapons and armor. Your own equipment showed us how to build better defenses. Even your blood samples taught us about your physiology and weaknesses." Zekthara felt a growing sense of horror. "You used me. You used my presence here to prepare for war against my own species." "We used the time you gave us," Dr. Vasquez corrected. "Every day you spent hunting our people was a day we spent learning how to fight yours. You could have killed hundreds of humans in those 3 weeks. Instead, you played games. You wanted to study us, to understand how we worked. That curiosity saved our species and doomed yours." Martinez pulled out another photograph. It showed a massive construction project in the mountains outside Pine Valley. Bunkers and weapon platforms were being built into the hillsides. Radar installations and missile launchers pointed toward the sky. "We've had 2 weeks to prepare," Martinez said. 2 weeks to study your technology and adapt it to our needs. 2 weeks to set up defenses and plan our strategy. Your people are walking into a trap. They are warriors," Zekthara protested. "Trained killers with centuries of experience." "They're hunters," Martinez corrected. "There's a difference. Hunters are used to tracking prey that runs away. They're not used to fighting enemies that fight back." The conversation was interrupted by a loud alarm. Red lights began flashing throughout the facility. A voice came over the intercom system. "All personnel to battle stations. Alien vessels are entering Earth's atmosphere. Estimated time to contact, 30 minutes. Martinez stood up and headed for the door. "Time to see if our preparations were enough." "Wait," Zekthara called after her. "You cannot win this fight. Even with my technology, you are still just prey animals. Release me and I will try to convince my people to spare some of your population." Martinez turned back to face her. "You still don't understand, do you? You still think we're prey animals? You still think the natural order makes you superior to us?" She walked back to the cage and knelt down so she was at eye level with Zekthara. "Let me explain something to you about humans. We are not the strongest species on our planet. We are not the fastest. We are not the most deadly in individual combat. But we are the most successful species in the history of our world. Do you know why?" Zekthara said nothing. "Because we learned something that your people never did," Martinez continued. "We learned that survival is not about being the strongest predator. It is about adapting faster than your environment changes. It is about working together to overcome challenges that no individual could face alone. It is about turning every disadvantage into an advantage." Martinez stood up and headed for the door again. "Your people are about to learn what happens when the most adaptable species in the galaxy decides that you are the threat that needs to be eliminated." As the sheriff left the room, Zekthara heard the sound of aircraft taking off. She looked through the small window in her cage and saw human fighters rising into the sky. They were equipped with energy weapons and defensive shields based on her own technology. But there was something else. Something that made her blood run cold. The human aircraft were not just copies of Vorthaki designs. They were improvements. The humans had taken her people's technology and made it better. In the distance, 3 dark shapes appeared in the sky. Vorthaki ships, sleek and deadly, descending toward the planet like falling stars. Zekthara had seen those ships in action before. They could destroy cities and hunt entire populations to extinction, but as she watched, the human aircraft rose to meet them. And for the first time since her capture, Zekthara found herself hoping that the prey animals would win. The battle was brief but decisive. The Vorthaki ships, designed for hunting defenseless populations, were not prepared for organized military resistance. The human fighters swarmed them like angry insects, using coordinated attacks to overwhelm their defenses. When it was over, all 3 Vorthaki ships had been shot down. The warriors who survived the crashes were quickly captured or killed by human ground forces. Sheriff Martinez returned to Zekthara's cage several hours later. She looked tired but satisfied. "It's over," she said simply. Zekthara stared at her in shock. "All of them? Dead or captured, just like you, but that is impossible. Vorthaki warriors are the finest fighters in the galaxy." Martinez sat down in her chair and pulled out her tablet. "I've been recording a message for you to send to your people. A warning, if you will." She activated the device and Zekthara's image appeared on the screen. But it was not the proud warrior who had crashed on Earth a month ago. This was a broken creature, defeated and caged by the very prey animals she had come to hunt. "This message is for the Vorthaki Empire," Martinez said to the camera. "You sent your warriors to hunt humans. You believed we were prey animals, weak and defenseless. You were wrong." Martinez turned the camera toward the window, showing the wreckage of the Vorthaki ships scattered across the valley below. "We are not prey," she continued. "We are not weak. We are the species that survived ice ages and plagues and wars. We are the species that turned every threat into an opportunity to grow stronger. We are the species that learned to work together to overcome any challenge." She turned the camera back to Zekthara. "Your warrior came to our world thinking she was the predator. She learned that she was wrong. Your hunting expedition came here thinking they could easily conquer us. They learned that they were wrong. Now you must learn the same lesson." Martinez stepped closer to the camera. "Stay away from Earth. Stay away from human space. Find easier prey to hunt because you will not find it here. The next time you send ships to our world, we will not simply defend ourselves. We will follow those ships back to their source. And then you will learn what it feels like to be hunted by humans." The recording ended. Martinez looked at Zekthara for a long moment.